All right, so this is a sample chart, okay? If I were doing your reading, I would be doing a video reading for you because right now my services will now include, you can choose the video recording, which would look like this with your chart. And usually it's about an hour. It's about an hour where I go over your chart placements and the personalized written PDF that at this point it's ranging from 9 to 13 pages depending on the person, where I intricately go over every house, intricately type everything up and package it up all neat for you guys. And I go over your life path number as well, your deacon, your birth date, just other aspects of you as well to help you understand how everything fits together. So that's the option that I have. And the second option I have is the chart, which is just the video recording where I go over your placements. But I still do the same amount of analyzing. I still do the same amount of thought process into your reading. It's just, it's not typed up for you as well. So I'm going to walk you through this as if this is you. I might stop sometimes to tell you how I do things, but that is, I just want to get started so you can see what I would be able to provide for you if you do book a reading. So the first thing we're going to look over is your chart type. How do the different placements of the planet indicate something about you and the way your thematic experience? So a funnel, if I'm picturing what a funnel looks like, as you know, is a spout, at the top, where it's a funnel, it's leading Uranus, okay? And then we have Pluto by itself, pretty much. Every other planet is pretty much close together, with the exception of Mars, which is why we also can look here that there's a T squared of Mars. We'll talk about that in a second. But for the most part, all these planets and all this energy, and some of these are not planets, some of these are asteroids, and we have the nodes. I do work with some asteroids on most of my readings, so I will talk about that in a moment. If we look, most of these are all funneling towards Pluto. But what I sometimes say with this is that it means that there's some relationships that need to happen, right? There's some work that has to happen in these parts of your life in order for this energy to really flow, because this energy is by itself. It doesn't have the support of another planet or placement or near it. I mean, to be honest. Now, we do have Juno there, but Juno's a whole different thing. Juno is not necessarily you as the person. It's the marriage partner, the significant partner. I'll talk about that in a moment. So Pluto is going to be really important. What else can we tell from looking at your chart in the first minute? Well, that's why it's important to get a chart reading, because you as a Gemini, you are not the same as your dad who's a Gemini, or your cousin who's a Gemini, right? Because your cousin might be a May Gemini, and that chart looks completely different. And the reason I say this is because the first thing I've noticed already from this person is like, this is a strong energy. It's a person that's probably really they're kind of dominant in some way. You would be very driven. You go for what you want. You don't really wait around for other people. Why am I saying that? Well, Pluto is a very intense planet which is dealing with our transformation, but also it can be obsessive, and it can be, but Pluto consumes. And that's why sometimes it's linked to transformation of like development and things becoming something different, right? And that takes a lot of effort. That's why Pluto is considered this intense planet. But also Pluto can be a bit abusive and obsessive. And there's that literal energy of that. But we also have Mars. So Mars rules Aries, right? Mars also rules Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto and Mars. But Pluto also rules Scorpio. So as we can see here, this is already a strong energy because these planets are in their rulership, and they're both in fire houses, and fire is passion, and fire moves forth. So these areas of your life, there's already going to be a lot of activity. One, and we'll talk about what the first house and the fifth house means, but already from your chart, even though you're a Gemini, and Geminis can have a stereotype about, they're flighty, or they know a lot of things, but they don't know how to settle down and things of that nature. That's the stereotype. I'm not saying that's what I believe all Geminis to be. You're not like that. If I'm looking at your chart, there's a lot of heavy energy, which shows a little bit more structure, a little bit more direction. You like to set your sight on something and go for it. If you had a ton of air energy, I might say, not really. Now, we do have to talk about Mars and Aries' tendency to be impulsive, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So already from your chart, Scorpio is your rising sign. Pluto is in Scorpio. Mars is in Aries. You have a placement in the house associated with Mars, the first, and you have placements in the house associated with Mars and Pluto. right? So you have a lot of heavy Scorpio energy going on in this chart. Mars and Pluto are going to be really important to your development. And as you can see here, your chart also makes an aspect pattern, T square. We're dealing with 3 planets squaring and leading to Mars, right? So there's also an emphasis on this area of life, right? So already I can tell by the first minute what I'm going to say about your chart, okay? Because this strong energy of Pluto. Now, Pluto in the first house, you like to be taken seriously. First house of identity, it's self-assertion, is where we are conscious of who we are and what we want to project ourselves to be. And the interesting thing about Pluto and Scorpio is it's not a really lighthearted energy, but it's in this fire house. And so this is going to come out. Though Pluto and Scorpio can be a bit probing and sometimes it can be kind of secretive and we're not sure what's going on with Pluto and Scorpio energy, it's in your first house. So you have no choice but to claim that as a part of who you are. You take things very seriously. When you have something to do, you kind of own it. You don't like to see yourself fail. So you can be really hard on yourself because anytime we have the first house, it's your conscious awareness of what you're going to come out as or what you want to project. If you had Jupiter here, you want to project that you're joyful, that you're happy, that you're you're open and optimistic. Again, it would depend on what sign it's in to really dive deeper. So already I'm noticing this fact that you're very hard on yourself most likely. And you're constantly thinking of ways in which to elevate yourself. But at the same time, you're not overly vulnerable, but you still have this really strong presence. And so I think that can really help you when it comes to a career. You have Leo in your midheaven, and we'll talk about that later. But this really strong presence that you have, use that for your advantage. Yes, because you have your sun and your moon in Gemini, you really do often also have this kind of more communicative spirit about you, but you also have a very serious nature about you. And sometimes that can lead to people with the Scorpio rising. It's, people aren't really sure what to think about you. And if your sun is already in the 8th house, yes, it's in Gemini, but we're going to talk about how that can sometimes lead to just not being very open. And that doesn't mean that's a bad thing, but there are some tendencies here to be a very serious person. And so I think you'll have the luck with being taken serious in your career that you want to have. You're definitely going to want to be your own boss. Now, I know that sounds great for everybody, but everybody doesn't need to do that, and everybody's not going to do that. Or anybody can be a leader or a boss, but it's going to look differently how you get to that level. And so what's going to look like for you is you're going to go through a series of maybe surprising experiences trying to get your foundation going. The second house is ruled by Venus. Venus is relating to money. When it comes to the second house, we're talking about finances. We're talking about our values. When we get to Venus ruled 7th house is when we're talking more about our partnerships. So second house, we're talking about Venus and this possessions and values, and what will that look like for you in your area of your life. Uranus and Neptune being conjunct here is really showing this energy. It's kind of lighthearted, but it's also kind of unstructured, but it's very experimental. Until you get to the point where you want to get to, you're going to be like experiencing different upheavals in your financial status most likely, because you're trying to figure it out. Now, the good thing is you have Capricorn, you have Uranus, which is very non-traditional in traditional Capricorn. I've actually done a lot of readings lately for people that have certain placements. Like I randomly picked this date, but I've been doing a lot of readings lately for people who have similar placements, and these people are strangers to each other, so it's very interesting. But when someone has Uranus and Neptune here, we're thinking about dreams and we're thinking about sporadic change. And so you're going to eventually be at a point where you want to chase your dreams. So even if you feel right now you're not happy about where you are, your value system is linked to you being able to feel like you're doing what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Now, with this being in Capricorn, you are concerned a lot about achievement and developing yourself and moving forward. And because you have this Pluto energy here, I think it's like there's some part of you that doesn't feel good about being unstable. It's like you'll experiment, but you'll only go so far. You'll start and you'll be like, if something goes too far, you're not willing to kind of go forth with it. And I think the interesting thing here with this energy of Neptune is about dreams and things that aren't really concrete, things that we want, things that we wish. And so here we have Capricorn, Neptune and Capricorn. It gives you though some sense of stability and understanding in what it is that you truly want. So you're not really in delusion. right? Sometimes we can see Neptune energy and it's like delusional. Person doesn't know what they want. It's like you know what you want and you know that there's something that you have to do in order to obtain that. But in order to do that, yes, you're going to possibly see different upheavals in your finances, in how you make money, right? In what positions you go into, especially with Aries always also on that sixth house cusp. Sixth house deals with everyday life, work, health, service. You have Aries on the sixth house cusp. You only have an asteroid in the sixth house. So with Aries influencing your sixth house, what's likely to happen is Aries is unpredictable. Aries is reckless. Aries is but Aries also has direction. It's cardinal fire. So what's likely to happen with you is you're actually going to have different jobs. This is not career though. Sixth house is everyday life. Now, does the sixth house connect to our career in some ways? Yes. But the career pinnacle is the 10th house. The sixth house is everyday life. What do we spend our time doing every day? And so you being here, Aries being here actually is linking to this energy here where there is going to be some type of upheaval in some way, especially since these are both earth houses. So until you get to the point where you feel comfortable, yes, there is going to be, you just have to prepare yourself for that being a part of your journey. Learning how to deal with instability in order to get the lessons. Think about Capricorn energy is it's earning. You're going to get something at the end, but you are going to have to realize the fact that you might have some odd jobs. You might be disenfranchised for a little bit until you actually get to the point that you want to, which is frustrating to you because Pluto and Scorpio wants to maintain control. You want to be seen as somebody who has control, who is not vulnerable, who is not unsteady. But that is something that you're going to have to, be open to happening. Now, again, you're going to have more information in your written report on how all this fits together. Now, the third house. Also, when it comes to values, you're someone who believes deeply in being yourself and also following your own dreams. You might encourage people around you to follow their own dreams. You might be an inspiration to people. You're not. Now, the interesting thing is there is a part of you that you value tradition in some way, shape, or form, but at the same time, you're not willing to sacrifice what you truly want in the name of tradition. The reason I say that you have a heavy emphasis on tradition is you have Saturn in Capricorn. So Saturn in Capricorn is also a great placement. You have a lot of good placements. And I say that because you have a lot of placements in rulership. You have Pluto and Scorpio. You have Mars and Aries. You have Mercury and Gemini. You have Venus and Taurus. So you have these energies that are working really well together. Now, when you have Saturn in Capricorn, you understand the value of a work ethic. You understand it. Or some people, even though you're going through experiences where you're because guess what? Yes, you might change jobs here and there until you get to your career, right? But you have a good work ethic. So when you're at that job, even if you're there for a few months, you're doing what you need to do because you have a good work ethic. In fact, people probably don't want you to leave. They don't want you to leave. And even if you go back to your old bosses, they're probably yeah, but they were a good worker. Yeah, they left after 2 months because they didn't like this job, but they were really good. They were a good worker. All right. Because yes, Aries can be impulsive and some people might stereotype, well, an Aries person that might not show up on time, or Gemini might not show up on time. But the reality is where your Gemini placements are and where your Saturn is positioned, you actually have the potential to be really good at things when you actually want to do them. Okay. When you actually have committed to something and it actually catches your attention, you really, really stick the course. But you're going to have a huge aversion to things you don't want to do. Saturn in Capricorn, though, means, you respect some aspect of tradition. You understand that things should be done a certain way. With being in the third house ruled by Mercury, we're now dealing with your schooling as well. So you were someone that probably understood concepts pretty well. You understood things in a way in which you were probably successful with it in school. You pushed yourself to constantly be good. In fact, you probably, especially with this Mercury and Gemini being ruled by Mercury in this, and you having a placement in Mercury, what we see here is there's a mental, sharpness that you have, where you do value this concept of information. You value information. You value it in a way in which you can apply it to your everyday life. Third house also is showing this maturity that you have. So again, I think even from a young age, Saturn in the third house often can mean maturity. Being the oldest child or the oldest in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes it's dicey with half siblings and things of that nature, but maybe within your household you were the oldest child. There was you were serious. People might not have viewed you because the third house is where your early socialization lives. And when you have Saturn in the third house, there was something about you mature at a young age, even if it meant you had more responsibilities than other kids your age. You went home and you had to take care of your little sister, Saturn and Saturn in Capricorn. You learned early how to work at home, do certain things, wash the dishes, have chores, things of that nature. So now in adulthood, you have a really firm grasp on those things. Saturn in Capricorn, you also are very traditional when it comes to certain belief systems. And the interesting thing here is your North Node, not belief systems, but I mean like systems of schooling. You value education. You value it. You look at it as something that is something that people should do. You understand the sanctity of learning, because third house, we're dealing with school. We're dealing with formalized education. Ninth house, we're dealing with knowledge, exploration, when you go outside of your formal education in order to gain experience. And so Saturn in Capricorn here is like you're very dedicated. You also might be someone, you like the news a lot. You have a lot of very like sophisticated, I guess is the word maybe to say, hobbies and things you're interested in, but you also have this other side of you that's very active. Saturn in Capricorn, third house, you like to consume the news, you like to watch CNN most likely. You know, there's something about this where the news you consume is very much a kind of traditional type of person, where you like to understand what's happening around the world and things of that nature. And you have a respect for authority. So even though you have this like Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn, where you understand that things sometimes have to be a little bit disrupted. Like we can't just always do tradition. You can't just do what your parents told you to do in terms of being an adult and trying to find your own path. You understand that and you're willing to deviate a little bit. But at the same time, Saturn and Capricorn, you have an understanding of the sanctity of things, and you understand tradition. You kind of respect and honor in some way, shape, or form. Now, when we're looking at, and as far as your, even in your social circles, I think that you're seen as kind of some type of mature person. Like even with your friendships, even with the fact that you have Virgo on the 11th house cusp, so that's another earth sign, there's this very earthy quality about you. There's this very like mature and very grounded, where there's certain aspects of your life where people think you have it together. Now, do you always feel that you have it together? That's the other question. Now, your North Node being in Aquarius is significant because when we look at the North Node, that's the spiritual path that you're undertaking, and that is the opposite of your South Node. And so with your North Node being in Aquarius, you now have some type of dedication or duty to those around you. The third house is our familiarity. It's where we go to feel comfortable, who we grew up around, where we grew up. It's our neighborhood. The ninth house is where we go to explore. And so we will talk about the fact that you do have a planet near your South Node, and what does that mean? But with your North Node in Aquarius, now you're thinking about understanding things outside of yourself. You're going away from your South Node and Leo tendency to be very prideful and to kind of center yourself around certain messages and to center yourself around certain knowledge. And now it's about you connecting with groups of people. You really understanding in this lifetime what your true, what do you care about is the question when we look at Aquarius North Nodes. It's what do you care about? It's not who are you and what are you good at, which is like a North Node and Leo type of conversation. With this, we're looking at what do you care about? What causes do you care about? How can you help uplift society or your community in some way? So some type of work where you are able to uplift others and have shared ideology. You're learning in this lifetime with the North Node and Aquarius how to interact with other people, third house. Instead of going outside, you're instead of trying so hard to go outside of yourself to learn things, you're now learning how to look around you. What does your community need? What do the people around you say? The people around you are going to have a very good influence on your understanding and your social, the social landscape of things. So this North Node in Aquarius path is really about you looking at around you and having value in those types of experiences. Your neighborhood, your community, your schooling. You might be even involved in working within some type of formal education where you are helping people expand their understanding of society. How do we make society better is this Aquarius question. Doesn't mean you are becoming an Aquarius, but it's asking you, how do we make society better? What do we do? How do we engage people's thought process in a way in which they understand that the status quo doesn't always need to be the way to do things. And what happens though with you is like there is a little bit of conflict, right? Because you have Saturn in Capricorn, there's some traditional ideas that you might have, some traditional things that you kind of follow through with. But at the same time, North Node Aquarius is challenging you. And this is why it's so important to understand the fact that your North Node is not going to be activated yet. You're going to have to work through some of the South Node tendencies that you have. Now, we look at the fourth house. You have Aquarius on the fourth house cusp, and it's on the IC. All right. So in general, when we look at this energy, the fourth house, our home, where we come from, who we are, where do we belong? Aquarius there indicates a difference in who you represent in who you are represented as in your family. Meaning you might have a very different role in your family than you do in other aspects of your life, especially when we look at your midheaven here, where it's more about acceptance. You know, there is an element to your career where acceptance and praise is going to be a part of it, even though you have your North Node in Aquarius. But with Aquarius on the fourth house cusp, it just indicates like maybe you had an unconventional or different type of upbringing, maybe even possible. With this Saturn in Capricorn, there's something about your tradition, and typically you learn tradition from somebody else, right? And this could have been influenced in your early life. You learned, third house can also be things that you were taught in your early life. And then as we get to be adults, it then influences certain things. So I think even as an adult, you are taken seriously. How does this definitely correlates well to your Pluto and Scorpio. Like whatever it is you want to do, like people don't view you as a joke. People will listen to you. Now, again, I think you sometimes sacrifice the warmth that some people might have because these placements can be kind of harsher, harsher, a little bit more stoic maybe. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're concerned about how you come off to other people. There is going to be like this kind of seriousness that people view you as, but they're also going to know that you are someone who knows their stuff. You're someone who's very informative. You're somebody who has a good understanding and grasp of things. So Aquarius in the fourth house cusp can also show like maybe you were taught different things as a child. Maybe something like somebody in your house was traditional, but you went to grandmom's house and she was very, non-traditional, or, there was something part of your upbringing where your parents didn't raise you the way your grandparents wanted them to raise you. There was something very different about your understanding. And I think this influences even now your Uranus and Capricorn, where you're open to things being different to some extent because you were exposed to that as a child, and understanding those aspects of just like, and also you might have been raised in a environment where social equality was important. Your parents taught you that, or somebody in the family went through that. And so now you view yourself as someone who's like, hey, I need to help other people, or I need to broaden my horizons and my mindset and be very tolerant to the fact that people are different. So that's what Aquarius and the IC. And the IC is the private life. So at home, this is how you feel. You're comfortable being different at home. You have some type of influence in the home of being seen in that way. But then when it comes to this part of your life, it's a little bit different type of energy. I feel like you appear a little bit more open-minded when it comes to your interaction with other people, and that you're a little bit more like yourself. And you might have some unorthodox ideas and views that you have that you don't necessarily share with people who are not in your inner life. That's what I'm seeing with your chart. Now, typically what I'm going to do in your reading, so again, I use Placidus to do birth chart readings. Now, with Placidus, we have Pisces on the fifth house cusp influencing the fifth house, but then we also I'm going to focus more on if there is a planet on that cusp, all right? Now, if a house is empty, that's when I'm going to focus on the cusp. Now, we have Mars in Aries. So Mars in Aries, again, as I said earlier, it rules Aries, and this is a fire house. This is Sun's house. This is Leo's energy house, right? So now it's not just the impulsiveness that we sometimes would see if Mars was in the first house, but we are having now this talent, this energy. You need to do some energy release. The fifth house is fun. So we think about all things that are lighthearted here. Children. We think of things such as hobbies, creative talents, leisure. What do you do when you want to have fun? We also sometimes can see elements of somebody's dating habits in the fifth house, lighthearted fun. But again, I don't want to graze over the fifth house as just fun and light and fluffy, because the fifth house is really telling you what you need to do to have release and what you really need to do to understand who you are, your talents, your hobbies. This is the only house where we're now focusing on what are you good at? Where is your confidence stemming from? From what type of activities? From what type of things do you get your confidence? And so we see Mars in Aries, it's like impulse, acting, um, doing, and yes, it could be literally acting as well. The fifth house is anywhere kind of energetic and fun, but I'm looking more of this physical release. I feel like you're someone that might benefit from like a gym routine, especially when you also have Aries on the sixth house cusp. So you benefit from physical activity of some sort, going out to places, venturing out. Remember, Aries energy is about experience, and Aries wants to experience everything because it's the first sign of the zodiac. So it has that kind of newness energy to it. And so, you just kind of like to have fun. You like to just do things that are more spontaneous. You're the friend that might say like, hey, let's just go drive here for the day. So the fifth house, in order to stay, and the reason I say it's important for balance is because the fifth house is what you want to do. What you like doing in the physical world. The 12th house is what we want to do when we relax, when we're by ourselves, or when we're in private. 12th house is when we are doing what we want. The sixth house is doing what we have to do. I would say the fifth house is more when what are your activities that you're doing, because the fifth house can include other people, even though this is more about your leisure activities. Why? Because the opposite house, the 11th house, is friendships and networks and groups. And too much energy in the 11th house, now everything you're doing is about other people. When we have the fifth house, this is you, what you're into, what you like. You're a little bit competitive as well, especially, so some of you might be involved in some type of competitive sports, or something in which you are, you have to keep yourself active. But Mars is competitive, and so Mars in Aries, so you might benefit from those type of activities, even if you're challenging yourself. And so it's really important for you guys not to stop being physically active. You likely might feel, some people report being more depressed if they don't exercise, or if they don't have a physical release, if they're not going and doing something. So that's important to keep in mind. A lot of times we overlook the fifth house as, oh, it's fun, but it's really leisure. It's also giving you clues of what you should do for self-confidence. All right. Mars and Aries energy. Also, we're looking at the fact that, if we look at even, the influence here of children, if you decide to have children, I think there is, Mars and Aries. So Jupiter would mean like probably a lot of kids, right? I think the Mars and Aries energy could indicate as well potentially, having kids too, but it might not be planned perhaps. Now again, the fifth house is touchy with that because it is a sensitive topic to talk about, whether someone's going to have children or whether they're not, or whether they, I don't ever really give definitive like, no, yes you are, no you're not type of things, because that's a personal thing. But I do let you guys know, based on the placement, what does that mean. Most people I've done charts for with Jupiter in that fifth house have kids, or want kids, or are involved with some type of kid activities. Maybe they are involved with kid, maybe they do, parties for kids. Maybe they are involved in some type of teaching of kids. Maybe they make kid activities online. They're somehow making kids toys, something like that. So it's very important with the fifth house to look at those things. But yeah, I would say that you might, and again, we can also look at the fact that there's sometimes there's this idea that if you look at your cusp, what sign is on the cusp of your fifth house, it tells you more what your kids might be like. Again, that's a theory, but I do want to share that sometimes that Mars and Aries can mean like, yeah, there's some type of child raising experience. It's a little bit unexpected. Now it's not a weird situation, not weird, but Uranus would be kind of like unexpected completely. Mars might just be like, you don't really plan it out, or it just kind of happens type of situation. You're just trying to figure things out. Now, Vesta is an asteroid that I include in readings. Vesta deals with service and duty, what it is that you feel obligated to do. And again, with Vesta, all these asteroids, you're not always conscious of these asteroids in that way. But the sixth house dealing with everyday life, when you see Vesta in Taurus, you're someone who you like to maintain some sense of stability and some type of routine in life. And you want to be able to show people that. And that's why I said, even though you have Aries, let me go back for 1 second. Sorry. Mars and Aries also, like, you have to watch out for being too impulsive, because into wanting too much fun. Fifth house, fun. Ooh. But you have to watch out for that, and really make sure that you're not, you're not depriving yourself of the experience to be, more in tune with your actual needs. Your Mars does, if we look here, your Mars does square Neptune. Okay, your Mars also squares Jupiter, right? So you got to watch out for too much fun, which is stopping you from these areas of your life. If we're going to look specific, let's go deep. If we're going to look at squares and sextiles and conjuncts, right? Let's go deep. Let's look at the house, right? Because if we're saying Neptune is square Mars, or your Mars is square Neptune, Neptune is right here in your second house, dealing with your foundation, and you really trying to evolve yourself through what it is you dream and what you want. And you understand that life doesn't have to just be what someone told you to do. The life can be the things that you always dreamed and wanted, and you understand that it might be a little bit unsteady to get to that part. And I think that's something you have to kind of accept. But at the same time, you can have too much fun and be too impulsive, and that can impact these other areas of your life where you can, where you're supposed to benefit, especially with Jupiter being in Cancer, and I'll talk about that in a moment. All right, so just watching out for impulse, especially with your moon also being in Gemini, where like ideas are so fleeting and your emotions can range a little bit. Just watching out for those if it becomes a hindrance to what you truly want, because it can be so easy for you to go forth with stuff, just being Mars and Aries in general, but then lacking the execution. But I think what helps you a lot is having the Saturn in Capricorn. But again, your Saturn in Capricorn is in the third house. So it's almost like you know the right things to do. You understand the rules. You understand how things are supposed to go. But just making sure that you don't live too much in this fifth house energy all the time. And just knowing when it's a time to play, when it's a time to work. Right. So I feel like when, you might feel like you overindulge in the serious aspect of yourself. You might feel pressure. You might have been raised to feel, you might feel a lot of pressure on you to excel and be a certain way. And I feel like I'm getting this with this chart of excelling. You had to excel. You had to be smart. You had to do this. You had to do that. And then sometimes you might like overindulge in this kind of play type of energy and this kind of impulsiveness. Let me just do what I want to do and have fun type of energy. In terms of, and when it comes like dating and things like that, I feel like there's like a lot of flirtation. You're a very direct person. Again, the fifth house is not about, long-term romance. Now, sometimes it can link up to your seventh house, or your Juno placement, but you're kind of really like direct. You're probably very flirtatious. You're kind of, it's like weird because like Aries goes for what it wants, but Aries sometimes just like can just play with that. Be very playful as well, like Gemini. Like you have this kind of playfulness about you when you're interested in someone that you might not show in other areas of your life. But yeah, Vesta being in the sixth house is just this concept of like stability and routine. And though there might be times in your life where you don't feel you have that, or you're struggling to figure out what is it that you want, you value this, and that is what you represent. And you like this concept and idea of being able to stay afloat and get by no matter what, and being very resourceful in what you have and preserving yourself. So let's talk about the descendant. Okay, so the descendant sign. All right, I've been talking about this descendant stuff a lot. Okay, so your descendant sign is Taurus. So we already went over what your Scorpio sign is. All right, so if you're a Taurus descendant, let me read what I have on my, just because this is a sample reading. Obviously, if I was doing a independent reading for an individual, I would word it differently. I always do that. I would still keep the essence of the energy of the sign, but I do word it differently based on other elements of the chart. So since you have the Scorpio intense energy all throughout your chart, as we see this Mars, Pluto type of vibe, Taurus descendant are the people that can show you something opposite of your rising. And so you come off in some ways, very serious, very poised, very direct, matter of fact in some ways, very tied to what it is you want, and you're very driven to what it is that you truly want. And this energy is very prominent throughout your chart. You know how to assert yourself very well. You know how to get your point across. You don't really, play the fence type of energy. But we have the Taurus energy person can show you, again, it could be a Taurus or a Taurus-like person. Doesn't mean they have to be a Taurus sun or anything like that. They show you just like how to lighten up sometimes, like how to just take things for what it is, how to like look at things as more, how to appreciate things without having to change them and transform them and then be so deep and intense all the time. And that doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. It just means that this person kind of gives you like a different look at yourself. It kind of inverts your traits. It's like a mirror. When you look in the mirror, sometimes it's not the same. Something's not on the right side, right? Like you look in some mirrors and it's like they distort your image. So that's pretty much what the descendant is doing. It's showing you another version of how to be, and you can kind of take those traits a little bit. Now, the seventh house deals with partnership. Okay. And so we're dealing with partnership, and who you relate to, how you relate. Again, we're looking at the fact that Venus in Taurus is a very strong energy here, right? Venus rules Taurus. You have this in the 7th house. So when you have Venus in the 7th house, already there's this understanding of partnership in a true, unique way in which no one else kind of experiences. Venus being in the 7th house is a great energy. Now, it's not Venus in Libra. 7th house would love if Venus in Libra was in the 7th house, because Libra is associated with the 7th house. But either way, Venus being in the sign that it rules, in the house that it rules, is a great understanding of you not just having a relationship for the sake of it. There has to be some type of durability to it. In fact, it's almost like you're more, loyal to this relationship than maybe other aspects of your life. Even with you trying to, your emotions, the way you project yourself, you're trying to project a certain image of being someone who is, in some way you do want to project like being knowledgeable, being informative, knowing some things. You like to project that energy, but at the same time, you have Venus here. When it comes to relationships, you probably put a lot of effort in your relationships. And you kind of put a lot of effort in, and you also expect a lot in return. You expect this kind of reciprocation from a partner. And so that's why I say your Mars in Aries, that flirtation and that attraction, depending, now here's the goal with astrology is, again, when I say stuff, I say it and then you connect the dots. Certain things are just studies. This is a study. Astrology is a study. It's not something that was just made up because somebody wanted to talk, you know what I mean? Like it's a study, and it has rules to it, and it has just certain things that just are, and you can kind of connect the dots yourself if something doesn't resonate with you. But typically, sometimes it's said that Mars in a woman's chart, if a woman is attracted to a man or masculine energy, that Mars can indicate the type of person they're attracted to, and in a man's chart, vice versa, with Venus showing the type of woman he might be attracted to if he's attracted to women. Now, again, that's why I say connect the dots. If you're like, that's not me, that's not what I'm attracted to, then you can still use this same formula based on what works for you. So let's say if this was a woman's chart and we're looking at Mars, it's like she's attracted, again, from lighthearted flirting, because people are going to spend a lot of time dating until they actually get married, right? And some people don't want to get married, but they want a partner. They want a life partner, something like that. People are going to spend a lot of time dating until they get to that point. And so you might be attracted. Let's say if you were a woman, you might be attracted to a more, that guy's really daring and bold, and he's not afraid of anything. And you might be attracted to that type of person. You might exude that energy as well when it comes to who you're attracted to. You kind of, but when it comes to what you value in a partnership, it's very different, right? We're getting Taurus is nothing like Aries. Like those signs are nothing alike, except for they're both kind of transparent, but this earthly quality to your actual relationships. And that's why it's very important sometimes to not get stuck in the 5th house in a way, because a lot of times who we flirt with or who we're interested in, who we're dating, doesn't really reflect what we really value in a relationship. And you can be attracted to somebody, but then end up in a relationship and be like, wait a minute, I need stability. I need you to have a foundation. And Aries is like, hey, let's just go have fun. Let's not be so stuck in our ways. That's fixed energy. Taurus is fixed energy. So your Venus in Taurus, you value relationships that give you some sense of security financially, and also with partnership. You like to know this person is truly there for you. You're someone that can maybe forego some of the other thrills and frills of a relationship, just as long as this person is dependable, and they show you that you are, and they show that they're there in order to really give you the affection that you want and love that you want. Now, again, there's not a lot of water there, right? So you Venus and Taurus in the 7th house. There's an untapped emotional energy that you have in your chart. There's water. It says 5 water. Okay. Now that's including these asteroids as well. You see what I'm saying? Chiron in Gemini. Chiron in Cancer here. So there's also some other aspects that we deal with, like if you see it down here, okay? So it says it's 5 water, but if you look at it, it's really not a significant energy flow in your chart, right? Like you don't have anything in the 4th house, which is fine. You have some in the 8th house, but the 8th house is not about being vulnerable, but it's about feeling very intensely. And so it's a very different experience in the 12th house, which is like sensitivity and compassion. So I think with these placements, you do have to watch, and your moon being in Gemini, which is an air sign. So you might sometimes mistake, communicating for emotion. You might be like, but I told you, but I'm there for you, but I'm here for you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, but I'm this, but I'm that. And with these placements, it's really important for you to understand the emotional aspects of a relationship, because you could definitely get caught up in a situation where something seems stable, but the person doesn't feel like their emotional needs are met, because there's not a lot of placements in your chart showing this emotional vulnerability or showing this outward pour of emotion. You get what I'm saying? Which it's fine. But at the same time, it might be something that you need to look into, because that moon in Gemini, in the 7th house, it's air. So you talk a lot to your partner. You know, you might be someone who's like, you always like to bounce ideas off of people that you are in partnership with. You know, even when it comes to business partnerships, it's very important for you to find somebody who has that kind of work ethic and that stability that you will come to respect. But at the same time, a lot of times moon in Gemini, it's like you don't feel stable, or your emotions don't feel stable. You're a mutable moon in an air house. And so your view of connecting or your love language might not match other people. And so it's going to be very important for you to understand that that can confuse some people who are like, if your moon's direction is about just, you got to get the facts first. You got to understand things first. You got to, talk about it first. You have to question things. Maybe you're very curious as a Gemini. You're a very curious person. And by nature, you like to question things. And sometimes in a relationship, other people will view that as like, why are you questioning this? This is what it is. But in order for you to feel stable, you feel like you have to question things sometimes. So that's where there's a lot of energy going on in your 7th house. And you have Gemini, you have Taurus going on. So there's this foundational aspect where you kind of know what makes a good relationship on the surface. All right. Remember, Venus is, Taurus is surface. Taurus is earth. I see it. Taurus is not, but your Venus sign is not Scorpio. And so that's very something, which is more that deep intensity. So that's where it's, you have to learn these aspects of situations in order to really feel that you're feeling that you are adhering to a partner's needs, And I might bounce back and go back to here a little bit. But if you look at the 8th house, okay, so we're talking about transformation, okay, development, rebirth. We're talking about inheritance. We're talking about joint assets, things of that nature. So the first thing we're going to come upon is your Mercury in Gemini. And I'm going to bounce probably back between your Sun and your Mercury. And so with these energies, it's what you say and what you communicate is very close to what you project. You're not the type of person who says one thing and then you show another. That's why a lot of times people are saying someone's a hypocrite. Well, sometimes they are, for sure. But sometimes it's like, if you look at something on an astrological level, it's the person's Sun and Mercury are not doing the same thing, right? If you had someone who has, let me make an example, a Sag Sun, or maybe not a Sag Sun, maybe a Scorpio Sun, Sag Mercury, or something like that. Like it can come off as like something's different about what you said versus what you're projecting. The Sun is your ego. It is what you are conscious of projecting. Even if you don't vibe with your sign, it is, as a Sun in Gemini, you are conscious that you are, you're informative. You're giving people information. You also have Saturn in the 3rd house that deals with Mercury. Now, Mercury also rules the 6th house, but you only have an asteroid there. So already there's this energy here. And also for you, sometimes it might feel like you're not comfortable projecting yourself. You're not comfortable with that energy, because it's like, there's a part of you that wants more emotional connection to people. You just don't know how to do it. You're very unsure of how to go through emotional connections to people. Your Aquarius in the 4th house is an air house. Air sign in the 4th house of emotions, of connection, of your upbringing, of where you first learned emotions. And there's a very overly logical perception. Growing up, it might have even been a very overly, ideological type of upbringing you had. Maybe you didn't get a lot of emotion support, or you didn't get a lot of affection, because Aquarius energy is not known for affection. It is known for, I'm going to show affection through pushing society forward. Aquarius is like, look, I'm here to help y'all get better. I'm here to help society move forward and be revolutionary and be innovative, new ideas. That's what Aquarius energy is about. So I do think there's a lot of culmination here of you not being really quite comfortable with emotions, including your Juno and Scorpio. We'll talk about that in a moment. And your Chiron in Cancer. So that's the pattern that we're seeing here, and that's what I'll be doing in a chart. The pattern here is you're not quite comfortable showing emotion. You have Aquarius in the fourth house cusp. So you really didn't necessarily get that upbringing where you felt emotions were there. Your parents or your upbringing, you felt very they might have exposed you a lot. You might have lived in a household where it was very like forward thinking, progressive. We're gonna help everybody, but at the same time, you might not have gotten that emotional a touch that you need. Now, what's going to happen is you growing up that way is going to definitely help you meet your North Node needs, because you already have been exposed to thinking outside the box. How do we look at society and say like, no, we need to change something. We're not going to keep this the same, And for you, it's not about you changing the whole society, but maybe your inner community. Maybe you work in a school, maybe you work in your neighborhood. You work with people who are from where you're from, whatever the case may be. So we're seeing the pattern here. There's not a lot of emotional release. And even when you have in the eighth house, you're still holding your emotions in. So Mercury and Gemini, like, you get information, but at the same time, it's so you can consume information, It's like you like to know everything before you do it in order for you to feel like you have some power and control. So I'm also seeing this chart a slight slight need for power and control. And I think you can channel that into positive things. Mercury and Gemini in the eighth house, you get the right information. Eighth house is very has a gut instinct. Eighth house energy is like, you have fourth house is intuition. It's more flowing to you in a way. It's more coming to you in a way. The fourth house, you're opening yourself up emotionally. The eighth house is more knowing yourself and being so involved in your own perception of things that you have gut instincts for situations that are outside of you, and the fourth house might be better with things inside of you, if that makes sense. So with this, you have really good gut instincts, and you might be someone who's able to get really good information from people. You're inquisitive, and you also like to go deep and understand something. So it's not just the Mercury and Gemini that's kind of just out there and just getting information. They know all this stuff, but it's not really sure what to do with it. You take information in for a specific purpose. You know how to use things to your advantage. I think you have a really good chart for being someone who's really just perceptive, smart, and driven. And you know how to use different areas of your life to get to that accomplishment. Now, Pallas is an asteroid which deals with creative intelligence. Pallas can help us understand when we are stuck in a bind, what type of default problem solving skills do you have? And so Pallas being in Gemini is, being very curious. You know that when something needs to be solved, that there's more information that you need to get. And not only you're going to get the information, you're going to really internalize the information. See how it works to your advantage. That's why Scorpio and eighth house energy is like, people have this perception, they take advantage or they're manipulative. Yeah, anyone can be manipulative, but yes, eighth house energy, Scorpio energy can be manipulative, but let me tell you why. It knows how to use things and align it to what their needs are. Okay? So yes, you can. I think that all the water signs in some way can do that, to be honest with you. Because water has a better understanding of what it needs, what it's trying to, what it feels, and that's a very strong thing. People forget water is what you feel. That current, water. Our bodies are comprised mostly of water. How can we deny the impact of water signs? Like it's weird what people do with astrology when it's like everything has meaning, right? So with the eighth house, as far as communication, you're probably not the super, super chatty, especially with the sun in Gemini. You're not the super, super, super chatty Gemini, but you do talk a lot to people that you feel have a vested interest in what you are about. You are more open and not free spirited when you trust people. And that is why you also, I think you have this moon in Gemini energy. And so this moon in Gemini energy and the sun in Gemini energy is, the moon, sun, Mercury, Gemini energy is really helping you connect to people. So even though it's not an emotional way, and again, you can work on that, it's through your information, your communication. And sometimes you might substitute communication for emotions. You're like, well, I contacted that person. Well, I asked them if they were okay. Well, I asked my partner this. Well, I talk to that person every day at work, but sometimes that person might not feel intimately connected to you. See what I'm saying? Also, you're also going through a little bit of crisis mode with that identity as Gemini, because you're at the 29th degree of Gemini, meaning you're about to be a Cancer. Okay? Like the 29th degree, remember, that's about to turn to the next sign. So if you were born a day later, because I think June, let me just make sure, because sometimes some of these Some of these signs, there's this weird thing where some of them start on the 19th, some start the 21st, the 23rd. Yes. Okay. So it's a cusp. Yeah, Cancer is the 21st. You're about to be a Cancer. If you were born a couple of hours, several hours later, you'd be a Cancer. And so you feel it though. You want to tap into your emotions more, but you're like, whoa, I don't understand it all the way. And so you overcompensate sometimes with your seriousness, your direction, taking charge. You're probably a person, you're very successful, most likely Saturn in Capricorn. Your setbacks don't hurt you all that much. You have Uranus in Capricorn and Neptune in Capricorn in the second house. You taking those little risks and you kind of saying, well, I want to do this, let me try this. It doesn't hurt you all that much. You have that kind of confidence, you come out on top. But emotionally, I feel that there's going to be some blockages if you don't work on some things, especially with Chiron being in the Cancer. Let's talk. So you're almost a Cancer, but you're not. And you're still a Gemini. I don't want to say that you're a Cancer because of this, but like I said, this is very close to Cancer. And so that energy is not purely Gemini if it's about to come into a different sign. Like there's something going on at that degree where it's like, okay, I'm about to change. Chiron in Capricorn. Chiron in Cancer. We look at Chiron in Cancer. Chiron is the wounded asteroid that usually started early in our life where we did not get something or receive something, or there was something done, said, imposed on us where it can block us in our adulthood if we're not careful. Chiron in Cancer deals with these emotional blockage. This kind of you starting or trying to relate or get some type of nurturing that maybe you perhaps did not get. Again, what I said with Aquarius, this kind of a unique upbringing, and perhaps it was a good upbringing for your mind, right? Aquarius is very logical and forward thinking as a society, so maybe it was a very good upbringing where like people in your family weren't judgmental. You were raised to respect everybody. You might have been raised to join different protests. You might have been raised, to view people as equals and accept people for who they are and not judge people based on their race or their orientation or where they come from. But there's some type of emotional blockage. And because of that, it stops you from exploring the range of emotions. So the ninth house is not an emotional house. It's fire. It's ruled by Jupiter. It deals with expansion. It deals with, it deals with expansion. It deals with long distance travel, foreign lands, as opposed to third house, which is neighborhood. Get it? Ninth house is knowledge. So third house is information. Ninth house can be experiences that what we learn outside of formal education. So third house is linked to systems of education. That's why the first few houses are all about kind of more systems, right? Your money, your early childhood, your early upbringing, your communication style. Who are you? Who are you? The fourth house. Where did you come from? The fifth house. What are you good at? The sixth house. What do you do every day? Who you are at first house. Like who do you identify as? Like all of that is this energy here. Once you start getting up here, now we're talking about other people and things outside of ourselves. And so Chiron in Cancer could just mean like being afraid to take on certain risks, being afraid to go different lengths, being afraid to experience things that are new to you, new emotions. I think for this, even though the ninth house is not about emotions, I think your Chiron in Cancer in this ninth house is actually saying it's symbolic. Your ninth house Chiron is symbolic of being afraid to venture to uncharted areas. You're afraid to feel things. Remember, Cancer is pure cardinal feelings. Like you can't hide Cancer energy. Cancer is not Scorpio and it's not Pisces, where Pisces can kind of take form, flow, the chameleon. I'm adapt to your feelings a little bit and be compassionate. Cancer is there, and it's the purest form of emotion because it doesn't have restrictions yet. It doesn't have any hang-ups yet, right? Now again, good or bad, because Cancer energy can become a little bit, we know the stereotype. Sometimes it's this moodiness because their emotions are running really high. And when your emotions are running really high, it's now overtaking you. And that's great when you need to make an emotional decision. But when you need to make a more logical decision, that's not always great. And so sometimes Cancers don't always work in their best interest. Chiron in Cancer. Wow. You really need to learn how to open yourself up. And the first thing you have to do is by experiencing it. allowing yourself to feel that emotion, and what do you do with it? The ninth house is about messaging, right? And so because you haven't had to experience that, and you have been hiding behind a little bit your strength and your communication, and you're like, those are the things I'm good at. There's an untapped opportunity, especially when you have Jupiter conjunct your Chiron. Now, this is a great opportunity here. Jupiter in Cancer. So somehow your travels or your experiences are going to be linked to your ability to expand and your emotional impact on other people. When I see Jupiter in Cancer, we're dealing with expansion, right? But you also have this opportunity to be perceived as someone who's caring and who has a sense of nurturing about them. And maybe it has something to do with the roles that you've taken. In some way, shape, or form, there's an opportunity here that's missed if you do not activate that Chiron. So I think what actually needs to happen is you need to, doesn't mean become an overly emotional person. It means open up more to the people that deserve to hear from you how they feel, how you feel. Open up more. Acknowledge your feelings. You don't just have to be this very strong person all the time. You can open up to those who deserve to hear from you how you feel. And that can even start from the childhood. It can start from the family. You can start with telling your family how you feel. And it can start by telling your partner how you feel. It can start with that, because this beautiful energy here, Jupiter in the ninth house, Jupiter rules the ninth house. So somehow your journey is to connect to other people. Somehow your journey is connected also potentially to family, because Cancer energy is linked to the family. Okay, so Jupiter in Cancer gives you this opportunity to connect or travel with maybe family. Maybe there's some way, shape, or form where you learn or your knowledge is impacted by those where you're from. Spirituality and being able to look at things in a more broad perspective is something that's important. You have the ability to really tap into what you feel in order to expand your own knowledge. And so what I think it's here, it's even like the work that you do might have something to do with kind of helping people understand what their purpose is. You have Jupiter in Cancer. It's a person who's very they have luck with emotions. Like you're gonna have luck when you open up, when you allow yourself to heal from whatever it is this lack of feeling, that you can be emotional, that you can listen to your inner self, that you can develop your intuition. I also think there's a lot of potential here for this intuitive type of ability. I mean, I think that especially with Mercury being in the eighth house and also Jupiter dealing with wisdom and knowledge, and Cancer is an intuitive sign. It's linked to this kind of intuitive nature, the all-knowing inner nature of the fourth house. And so I think there's an untapped opportunity here for this Jupiter and Cancer energy. All right. You're going to go far away when you start to reconnect with who you are. And I think that's the biggest thing. Reconnect with who you are, reconnect where you come from. And that's going to take you on the journey that you need. For you, I think your ninth house is way more spiritual and emotional than it is telling you to go out and go abroad, go travel. That's typically what the ninth house is about. But I think for you, it's way more of a spiritual release. I think that you're going to have a major epiphany through reconnecting back to who you are, where you come from, who you relate to, even with this moon in the seventh house energy. Ceres is an asteroid that deals with your nurturing and how you support other people. Now, the moon is your inner drive. And yes, we can say there's certain aspects that we can connect, maybe your Ceres to your moon. But your Ceres in Leo shows you do well, let other people be the speaker for once. Let other people have a message for once. You have a South Node in Leo in a past life. Now let's talk about the South Node from the South Node. What I mean is I'm not going to talk about the positive aspects of Leo right now. I'm going to save that for a minute. In the past life, so Leo can be prideful of their ideas. As great and creative and charming as Leo energy can be, there can be a lot of pride. It's a fixed fire sign, where it's fixed fire is like, I've already thought of these great things. I'm not changing my mind. My approach is great type of energy, right? So again, I'm not saying that's Leo. I say a lot of the time that I love Leos, but this South Node Leo, no good. North Node Leo, we could talk about the good. So in a past life, you might have been charged to spread your awareness. Ninth house, spread. I say this probably would be the sign of somebody who was a missionary. Maybe you had to go to foreign places and spread your truth and what you thought was right and impose it on other people. And people looked at you as like, oh, they know what they're talking about. Because ninth house travel, and Leo prideful. Leo is prideful in their action, and it works well because Leo wants to do things well and wants to shine. But it also can deal with getting praise. And so because of that, I think the Ceres and Leo is telling you in this lifetime the way you can support and nurture others is nurture their ideas. And I think that's a beautiful connection to this North Node in Aquarius, where you're supposed to be doing that anyway. But with Leo, it's now you're supporting people through saying, yes, your idea is great, or yet inspiring people instead of taking the spotlight just for yourself. As your South Node in Leo shows, you had the spotlight on you for what you believe, the ninth house, beliefs, morals, right? Knowledge. People, you had the spotlight on you, and you were in charge of a certain belief or direction. Maybe you had to message something to people. You had to get people to believe or think a certain type of truth. And now in this lifetime, you need to collaborate a little bit more. You need to come together with people a little bit more. Your North Node Aquarius shows, actually, nope, chill. Learn to step outside yourself for a second. And now, how do you hear the opinions and the viewpoints and experiences of other people? Again, you have a really good head start here with you already having Aquarius in your fourth house. So this shouldn't be something completely foreign to you, because you would have grown up or experienced this Aquarius type energy, this Aquarius type mindset when you were younger. All right. Now, the midheaven. Okay. So Leo in the 10th house, also referred to as the midheaven. The midheaven is, or the MC, is the opposite of your IC, which we already talked about was in Aquarius. So the MC is more the public image. And the way I connect in my readings, the MC and the midheaven together. Your public image in addition to the ideal work environment. And the 10th house is a reputation. Or to get your reputation, you have to do some work, right? You have to do some actions. And usually, yes, I have lists of jobs people should get, but I want to talk more about this energy because you have a South Node in Leo. So you might be like, well, I have a South Node in Leo. How am I supposed to have a Leo midheaven? Like, isn't that going against what I'm supposed to be running from? The South Node doesn't mean you run from it. It just means you're already comfortable with these traits. So these are not things you need to strive for. You're going to shine no matter what. You have all these placements in your chart showing this kind of strength. People are going to visibly see how serious you are, how productive you are, how dedicated you are. People are going to see these kind of strong placements in your chart. And I mean, you all having Jupiter in your 9th house of like being knowledgeable and people looking at you maybe even for spiritual awareness. You kind of being someone who's able to give people an understanding of the greater, bigger picture of things through your kindness, through your warmth, even though you don't always come off like that. The goal is you do have some work to do when it comes to your openness and your awareness of who you are and where you come from and how to allow yourself to feel emotionally intelligent. I feel like there's a little bit of emotional intelligence that's lacking a little bit here. Like, I do feel like there can be intuitive abilities that you have, but I think that like you don't work on this aspect of yourself. So you overcompensate through what you do, and then it sometimes leaves you hanging when it comes to your actual emotions and feelings. And so, but the midheaven being in Leo is you're still having the ability to shine no matter what you do, even working through your North Node. You're going to be in a position where you're leading. You're a leader. You're seen. Your reputation is going to be important to you. And that's why I always tell people, like, listen, we know we live in a world where, like, nobody wants somebody crying every 5 seconds, regardless of gender, right? Like, nobody is, dealing with tears every 5 seconds. But, I mean, and let me say, like, there are certain professions where people are more likely to cry or be in pain, or, maybe even, like, therapy, things like that. So I'm not saying it's wrong to cry, but I'm saying, like, that's not what we should be thinking about when we think about being emotionally strong. We're talking about awareness of what we feel and using what we feel in order to move us forward in some way, shape, or form. But either way, you have this Leo energy where you can learn through your Jupiter in Cancer how to use that to your advantage and how to connect to different people. That being emotionally intelligent is a good trait, because then you're able to understand people's motivations more because you understand them from an emotional aspect. And when we know someone's emotions, we know someone's moon. The moon is their driver. That's all that is. I now know how this person is going to react. Leo, midheaven, you should still put yourself in positions where you are leading. You're not going to be happy in any position where you don't get some type of admiration or shine. And I don't think it's undeserved. The reason I say that is because you have placements as Saturn in Capricorn, Pluto in Scorpio, Mars in Aries. You are meant to lead. You're meant to lead. Whatever it is that you do, you are meant to be at the top. And again, with Leo, Leo makes a great kind of commander of the troops because there's kind of that charisma. And Leo can be really good at making everybody feel good, right? Leo is making everybody feel the same shine that Leo feels. And sometimes Leo's like, I want to shine first, then I'll let you guys shine. But you have this midheaven. So anytime you're working from a place where you're not able to get credit for what you do, that's probably not going to be a really good idea, because your midheaven need is still getting that shine and recognition. Now, again, I know that kind of goes against the South Node in Leo, but again, I think you'll be fine as long as you tap into this energy of your North Node in Aquarius. You might have, in your chart, you have to merge a little bit of your South Node and North Node. Now, I talked about Virgo a little bit. Virgo is on your cusp of your 11th house. When it comes to like your networks and your friendships and not, you have your friendships, your networks, and your forward thinking, I think there's a very analytical approach. You choose your networks very wisely. You don't really engage in every single thing. Now, I think the interesting thing is that I think this connects well to your North Node in Aquarius. I would say both Virgo and Aquarius are logical, but for different reasons. Virgo is really trying to break down and analyze and understand something, whereas Aquarius is trying to see what can we change, what can we move forward, right? What don't we have yet? That's Aquarius. What don't we have yet? And Virgo is more like, here's what we have, right? That's how I think, even though they're very different signs, Virgo and Aquarius fit a little bit together when it comes to being logical. So if you're ever having a conversation with Aquarius, Virgo, like, they're going to figure something out. Trust me. So I think, your associations that you have are people that kind of do the same type of thinking. I think you might belong to organizations or things that are more intellectual in their goals. You like to belong to groups and things that you feel are creating some type of service for others. So maybe you've been involved in community service before, or you actually are the person that goes out and does something. You're the type of person like, no, I'm going to go out and donate some blood to help some people out, because Virgo is also, linked to health. I'm going to go out and help put together this food at this food pantry. So I think your connection to the 11th house and forward thinking is through tasks. You ask yourself, what can I do to help other people? What can I do to help others in need? You also might be the friend who actually helps out another friend's endeavors. If there's somebody doing something that's community service oriented, but the way you do forward thinking, again, is the analytical. I think this correlates very well to your North Node in Aquarius. All right, so we're going to talk about Juno, lastly, in your 12th house. So Juno is the marriage asteroid, is what it's called. Now, again, understanding that not everybody wants to get married, I refer to it as a significant partner. And again, you can have more than one significant partner in your life. And by significant partner, I don't mean the person you flirt with. I don't mean the person that's stalking you on Facebook. I mean the person who you're in a relationship with that can actually teach you something of value. And so Juno is less about you individually and more about that person's energy. Now, the 12th house is a very spiritual house. I've readings lately where I've found a couple of people that actually have Juno in the 12th house. That is definitely like a soul type of connection. And I don't say that for everybody. Everyone's Juno doesn't mean you're not going to find a soulmate, but when you see Juno in the 12th house, it doesn't mean some type of karmic relationship. This person is meant to be in your life. It's not just a life partner who you stumbled upon. It's just somebody that's more deeply entrenched in your life based on some type of karmic relationship and past. So Juno and Scorpio is like intensity though. Like I said, Venus and Taurus, you value relationships that are kind of foundational and kind of function, and they're functional and that flow. And you like that idea of having a partner near you. You like that idea. It gives you a sense of stability in a times where you might not feel stable. But your Juno and Scorpio person needs to be intense. Now, I'm not saying that you can't, who you're attracted to might not be this person eventually for you. Not saying that. But the Juno and Scorpio partnership requires you to think and look at things in a more intense and deep way. It requires you to understand emotions in a more deep, intense way. And you're like, well, you said the 8th house doesn't like to be vulnerable. Yes, it doesn't, but it's very intense. And by intense, I mean it feels on a deeper level. where eighth house controls in a way what it feels. Now, I don't want to always say controls because sometimes eighth house pretends it doesn't care. Like people with eighth house placements or Scorpio pretend they don't care, but they do. But the difference is they're able to more funnel out what doesn't matter. The eighth house energy is more like, don't care about that anyway. I care about this. So this is what I'm committing myself to. So this energy here is this partnership needs to be one that's very committed. You both have a similar understanding and idea of what commitment looks like. But you also have to be willing to undergo that kind of emotional metamorphosis to understand emotionally where you both are. Juno being in the 12th house, way more sensitive, way more spiritual. Well, yeah, I would say more spiritual than the 8th house. The 8th house can deal with spiritual topics, but that's more like taboo, magic, things of that nature. The 12th house is that esoteric, 5D, can't touch it type of energy. The 8th house still has elements of earthly energy because the 8th house can also be dealing with money, joint finances, and things like that, where you're typically, even with your Gemini being here, this really is going to be, a theme. So the 12th house Juno is this more deep, intense connection to the esoteric, to the unconscious energy, to imagination, to dreams, things that we want it to become because we are able to use that 12th house energy. And so that's what I would say about your Juno and Scorpio person is you're learning depth and intensity and emotion, but you're also you're giving in. The 12th house, you have to learn to yield a little bit and let things flow and not be afraid of emotions. But I also feel like you may not benefit from this type of relationship until you heal your Chiron in Cancer, which is also stopping and preventing you from your Juno in Cancer energy, being able to truly connect to people and spread that awareness. All right. I think that it's very possible to be really emotionally intelligent in this life and be able to help people through their emotions and be able to like connect to things. And I mean, I think even with your 9th house Cancer, like history, like understanding things. Maybe you're understanding like the history of people who have gone through certain traumatic things or things of that nature. It's your knowledge. I think just building up your knowledge about emotional topics, building up your knowledge and experience with, I think even getting guidance and counseling can help you feel more strong. Feel stronger in those different aspects of your life. But I say that because 9th house can also be dealing with wisdom and people that you get wisdom from. Right? So I think Jupiter here is just kind of helping you see like this healing. That's why I said, I think most charts, I don't say this. I think your 9th house placements are way more symbolic than they are literally what the 9th house usually means. But that is it for this demo of the sample chart. If I was doing yours, it'd be tailored to you. But this is generally what I would do and how I would connect all these aspects of your chart in order to help you understand your life path, your life purpose, your tendencies, and experiences that you may have.